Can start. Okay. Hello everyone. We are now the new session for our MiDiGo webinar, and we have a guest from Barcelona, Danny de Torres. Danny is actually an advisor of the Council of Europe in the Intercultural Studies program and the director of REGI, Spanish Network of Intercultural Cities, and he is also promoter and director of Rumours Global, which seeks the deepening and international expansion of anti-rumors strategy. And he's also a professor at the master's program in migration studies at Pompeu Fabra University. Welcome, Danny. Could you, if you really, you can start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Sunata, and thank you for inviting me to this series of webinars. Very interesting webinars. I've checked the previous ones, so thank you. Today, my idea was just to share with you and the people who might be interested on providing an overview of this anti-rumors strategy. But before I start with more the proper presentation, I just want to share some context about the origin of this strategy, because in 2007 I was Commissioner for Immigration and Intercultural Dialogue of the City of Barcelona, and we had a very important challenge in front of us. It was to design a city strategy, an intercultural strategy, to see what policies we should implement in order to promote a more inclusive city, a city that had had an important change on the previous years. Just one number: in the year 2000 in Barcelona were living more or less 50,000 people with a foreign nationality, 50,000, and in the year 2008 that number was almost 300,000. That means that in quite a short period of time, the city, like many other also cities in Spain in that period, they saw an important change in terms of the diversity of origin, cultural backgrounds, or religions, etc., etc. And it were especially in the cities in where the diversity, the new diversity, was so obvious in the daily life of people, in the streets, in the schools, in the places, in the hospitals, in the shops, in everyday life. Were cities who had to really adapt and implement new policies, and at what moment we decide to focus on the intercultural approach based on three principles. We need to guarantee an equal access to services, to rights for everybody, independently of origin, nationality, whatever. That was a main big principle. The second was about recognition of diversity. We had to recognize that the city changed, that the us of we, the citizens of Barcelona, was different in terms of including much more diversity, let's say, than before. Although before we had many also diversities, but that recognition coming also from the institutional dimension, it was very important. And also, the third principle, it was about interaction, about how could we avoid, let's say, the ghettoization, right? The coexistence of different groups of people, of communities, but not really having a meaningful really contact and promoting inclusion and cohesion. So when we decide to start that plan, that intercultural plan, we make a survey among lot of people, local actors, citizens from very different backgrounds, fields, professionals, ages, genders, origins, etc. And it was we asked one question among others about what was preventing people to have a much more positive interaction in a city with such a more diversity than before. And the main answers, people point out the importance of prejudices, the stereotypes, the ignorance, the subjective dimension, among, of course, others like speaking the same language or inequalities or different cultures or whatever. But the existence of prejudices and stereotypes was highlighted as one of the main reasons that was hindering a much more relations and positive interaction among people. And we realized from, I'm talking now at that moment as a public administration, that in our policies we were not taking into account the real impact of prejudices and stereotypes in our life. And we start calling it also rumors. How a lot of people, not just those people who were like on the extreme, like being more hostile or racist among this diversity, but majority, a social majority of people with some ambivalent and ambiguous approach to this diversity. A lot of people were also sharing some rumors, ideas, beliefs based on prejudices and stereotypes. And we decided that we had to do something about that. Because if we think about the hate pyramid, we see the stereotypes and prejudice on the bottom, but then that's the base for a much more negative attitudes or actions related to how people live in a more diverse context. So we start, and now we're starting with this, saying what is really an anti-rumors strategy. How we start in 2009, 2010 in Barcelona to decide how can we do something very specifically targeting prejudices, stereotypes, and using this idea of the rumors that was something very human. We all participate at some point to share rumors, and we all of us at some point can be victims of rumors from others. And in this moment of the social media importance, it's rumors are all around. At that time, still there was not that the fake news concept, the post-truth. That was 2009, 2010. But then after some years, this concept became more relevant because of the explosion of the fake news and all these things. So what's an anti-rumor strategy? We need to put this strategy in the context of some global or more general objectives, like preventing discrimination that was linked to the principle of equality. But we also want to promote inclusion and positive interaction. And also we want to make the most of diversity, not seeing diversity as something we need to deal with to prevent the bad things to happen, like discrimination, racism, xenophobia, or other kind of things, but also as an opportunity that if we as a city were not able to make the most of that diversity, we will be also losing a lot of opportunities and advantages that diversity can bring in any city. So the second thing we thought, apart from these general objectives, is that we need a combination of a public policy and the engagement of a lot of actors from the civil society. This is not something that we can do from the office of a public administration. Let's reduce some prejudices, like, okay, let's do the thing in our office and let's design some policy and let's do it. No, this has to be something that we share with much more other local actors. This is a common, a collective responsibility. So the specific objectives, going more into the detail, it was this idea that, okay, we need to promote critical thinking. That's a very important thing for the strategy, and later I will comment more on this, and raise awareness about the negative effects of stereotypes and prejudices, because we realized that a lot of people, they were not aware, first thing, that we all have prejudices, that everybody has prejudices, but through our system, institutions, education system, media, cultural, etc., we in an unconscious way many times we are contributing to consolidate some of the prejudices, stereotypes dealing with different diversity issues. So we want to promote critical thinking, but we also, as I said before, we want to engage and empower a wide range of stakeholders and citizens. So to create a network, local networks, in which people could cooperate, collaborate, share projects, share know-how, experiences, and work together towards this goal. And then also we realize that there are many elements that influences the existence of prejudices in our society that cannot be dealt from a local network of actors in a city, from in the neighborhoods. There are impacts coming from the media, from the political discourses, from some structural inequalities in our in our society, that it goes further of our capacity to impact. So we want also to influence the political and social agenda. So other actors, like for example, regional governments at the national level, but also big, social actors, companies, etc., also, be part and influence. For example, I don't know, Facebook, the company Facebook was interested on this project as well, and that was a way to influence also, some of the big players also on the spread of rumors, in our society. And very important, it's like the anti-rumors is not a communication campaign to spread anti-rumors, just data and arguments. This is very important, because a lot of people think at the beginning that, oh, anti-rumors, oh yeah, this is about the spreading data and arguments. It's not about that, it's much more. And and I don't want to go deep on this because that will take more time, but it's important that before we design a policy strategy to try to reduce those rumors who are based on stereotypes and prejudices, we know more about the nature, the origin, the consequences of the stereotypes and prejudices, and why nowadays also rumors are so well spread among, not just social media, but especially in social media. But there have been rumors in all the human history, right? And because they confirm also our prejudices and ideas. So we don't see reality from a neutral position. We have our ideas, we see reality, and we focus more on those messages that confirms our preconceptions and our previous ideas. And also rumors, they satisfy emotional needs, fear, anxiety. And in terms of changes, those politicians who know that very much, and who do some discourses based on promoting some fears, and identifying people to blame, or groups as a threat, that is very effective, because our brain reacts very easy to that kind of emotion. So then the rational dimension disappears. So this is just an idea that when we try to reduce prejudices and rumors, it's a complex thing to do, and they have a multifaceted nature, and they have different dimensions: the cognitive, emotional, and social as well. So if we really want to have any impact, we need to take into account all those dimensions. Okay, so we can go from the stereotype, which has the more cognitive dimension, to the prejudice, more effective discrimination, the action. And we could talk, and I won't do this, but how do we learn the prejudices that we have? How our tendency to put people in groups and boxes. Our brain is very easy to that, but that's not neutral. Why do we put those labels to certain groups? That's how do we learn in a social cultural way. And that has to do a lot to do also with the power relations in our society, and also the link with majorities and minorities. But also it has to do with this tendency to put boxes. We need to simplify. We tend to see reality in different groups. So I just want to point out these elements, that for the anti-rumor strategy, it's very important to have a deeper knowledge of all these causes and nature, because otherwise the kind of policies or practices or projects that people will implement, they won't have the impact if they don't come from a more rigorous analysis of things. So how can we reduce prejudices, stereotypes? There are a lot of theories, and from different disciplines, from social psychology, anthropology, neuroscience, whatever. It's obvious that knowledge is important. If you know more about things, you maybe have less prejudices, but it's not enough. We know people that have a lot of knowledge of things, and you still may be full of prejudices. Then the critical thinking, your capacity to look at yourself in a critical way, to put your sociocultural position in a context, and to do some relativism, and put yourself into the other, food, like promoting empathy, awareness, and of course relations, direct contact. It's one of the best ways to reduce prejudices. But we also need to take into account how institutions contribute to reinforce some prejudices and stereotypes, how the laws are decided, who decide those laws, how the rules, the norms, the social norms, how the education system, how the media, how the cultural way and policies influences the way we create our identities. So this is very important, because the anti-rumors, it doesn't just go towards the citizens. It also looked to institutions and to some actors like media and companies, to say we all have a responsibility here to really contribute to reduce prejudices in our society. So the anti-rumors strategy, as I said, it comes from this intercultural framework, but also it has to have a commitment in the long term. We cannot pretend to change anything in a communication campaign of 2 months, there's not going to be any change with this. It has to be a long-term commitment, starting here at the city level. As it start, we need for that political commitment, and that's very important if we want to have these two dimensions: the public policy dimension, let's say an institution, a government that accepts that that's a important topic on the agenda. So we want to implement policies that include the anti-rumors approach to contribute to reduce these prejudices and stereotypes and rumors. And that's something to say, because this is not something that has to do with the social area of a city. The way you design a city, the urban planning of the city, the housing policies of a city, the cultural, the sports, the education, the public space, all of these areas, they have an impact on then how people, confront or consolidate some prejudice and stereotypes. And I want to put like an emphasis on the fifth point. It's like we don't want just to blame people for having prejudices. I mean, we test many different strategies to attract the attention of people, to raise awareness in this. And it's not about just blaming people for being racist and saying everybody, oh, you're racist, and that's it. It's more like, hey, we all have prejudices. There are, of course, differences, but we are not really aware of the impact of our prejudice, especially in some people who are, target every day from many areas of the society about being labeled, being stereotyped, being prejudged because of the color of the skin, because of the background, because how they speak, the name, the religious, whatever. But it's not about saying just, oh, how racist. It's like, come on, we need to invite people to realize about that. And we realize that the rumors is an excuse to start a conversation that it's complex and it's not easy for many people. And it's not comfortable for many people to start accepting your own prejudices. So this is one of the elements that are important. And also the creativity, the innovation, the way to do things in a different way. Just to very brief before I just give you like some examples of how the step-by-step process of designing an anti-rumor strategy. And we started in Barcelona in 2010. 2013, there was this European project to adapt the anti-rumors strategy of Barcelona to 10 European cities in different countries. It was tested by experts from the Council of Europe and from evaluators. And then on the last 7-8 years, we've been in many different countries, like from Japan to Canada to Morocco to Jordan. That's because even with the big differences about the different contexts, social, cultural, political, economic, at the end, prejudices and stereotypes, they have so common roots And there's something very similar everywhere, even if the processes are a bit different, even if the context is so different. So you cannot just do the same thing everywhere. But the way the prejudices and the stereotypes are created, the way the people see different groups, minorities, the need for the status, the power relationship that exists, that's universal, in everywhere. So just how more than these 45 cities that have already implemented some anti-rumor strategy, what do we do when a city say, hey, let's do an anti-rumor strategy? We start always with the diagnosis, an anti-rumors diagnosis. Let's say, imagine your city, and you say, okay, what are the hot topics right now about diversity issues? What are the main prejudices and rumors that maybe they have a more negative impact in terms of how people live together, or in terms of discrimination? What are the groups? What are the topics? And then how is the intersectional approach taking into account? I mean, it's about gender issue, this mix with migrant background, but it's a social class thing also, and relate, to some, and there are so many different and elements that it determines finally the way prejudice, stereotypes, play a role in terms of inequalities and discrimination. So, but also the diagnosis is not just like that. It's not only identify the big topics that we consider more urgent, but also to identify what is already being done, because all cities, they are doing a lot of things and there are local organizations doing projects. There are there are many, from the education, from culture, from social organizations, migrants associations. There are a lot of people already working on trying to dismantle prejudice and stereotypes. And it's very important to identify who is doing what is really working, and how can we go together and gather together and create a kind of network, kind of cluster of people committed to these goals, and exchange and share our experiences, and design together some strategies together with public administrations and local governments. And that's a very important thing. That's why we need to prioritize. We need to build this network. In Barcelona now, probably there's more than 700 local organizations being part of the anti-rumors network of the city, and also citizens themselves, from very different fields: health, culture, public libraries, social organizations, migrant organizations, trade unions, etc., etc., being part of a network in which they share all these strategies together with the local and local government. Then the training anti-rumor agents. What are the skills? What are the knowledge? What are the strategies that are more effective when, if a teacher, if a local police, if you're working in a sport center, of you are a technical or a politician designing the policies of housing or sports in your city, how can you include this anti-rumors approach to be sure that the way you do things in your job is contributing to dismantle prejudice and stereotype, to promote critical thinking, to promote interaction, to promote empathy, and not to consolidate those prejudices. And that's also very, very important. And then implementing anti-rumors actions, campaigns, and do, of course, the evaluation. So I know I already spent a lot of time. So, Professor Sonata, just let me know. I think maybe we should going to the end, right? Because I think you've told me 15 minutes, I'm it's more.
I think we have a few minutes to
Yeah.
conclude this
Okay.
lesson.
Okay. Just to finish with some key ideas, challenges, lessons learned. Okay, just a little bit. Like a very important one. We start this in a context very influenced by the inflows of migrants in the city, but then. So the anti-rumors was very related to a kind of anti-racist strategy, but it's not. It's not an anti-racist strategy, because it's not just about migrants. It's just about all kind of diversities, and in taking into account the intersectional approach, and also saying, listen, there's also many stereotypes and prejudices for many different reasons, and how sexual orientation, how gender issues, and we realize we need to broaden the approach to all the elements that make people feel being discriminated, feel treated in equal way, and promoting critical thinking. You cannot just say, okay, we promote critical thinking, but just on these topics, on racism, xenophobia, we just leave apart the others. No, you cannot do that. Like it's a much more basic, general, and global. So also we move from more of a reactive approach to a really proactive approach. I mean, you cannot be a slave of the toxic narratives that some people are really investing in spreading, and you're gonna just say, oh, these people are saying it's not true, it's racist, the truth is this. No, this is not about that. This is building your own narratives, your own alternative or transformative or critic narratives on your own. So leading the agenda of the discourse on diversity, migration, but in much more just than migration, and just get different levels of influence. In other we are working now in some countries at the national level on how they include the anti-rumors approach at the national level or regional level, or how this is in this picture in the top right. It's Siemens company in Erlangen, because the city, when they realize who could be an ally in this city to work together to reduce prejudices in our city. So Siemens had headquarters there. More than 15,000 people work directly or indirectly of that, and having these people on board was a big change for the impact of the practices that we're doing there. So anyway, as I said before, in these years, more than 45 cities, they've done some kind of anti-rumors strategy work. More than 3,000 people have been trained as anti-rumor agents, and we have some evaluations and impacts from different projects. And just to finish saying, like, this kind of process, it has to be stimulating, it has to be exciting for people to join. And we have volunteers, we have local organizations, we have people from the education, etc. And if you keep it in a stimulating and a positive way, being part of this is something positive. It's not just something very, like, oh, hours there on meetings or whatever. No, it has some very practical approaches with practical tools and skills that you can get and you can use the day after in your work, in your job, in your school, in your theater, in your company. So yeah, the multidimensional approach. And just to finish, we are moving now beyond the local level, getting, engaging all the different levels of governments and international organizations. We work a lot on evaluation and indicators. There are some risks, the challenges, like people, some cities, they start and they stick too much on the rumors. Oh, people think that migrants are stealing our jobs. Let's dismantle this rumor, giving data and numbers that this is not true. Okay, well, whatever. That's an option you can do, but you can do much more than that. Like, this is the surface. But why people think this? What is behind those fears, those feelings, those ideas? So this is where we need to go to the root, to the causes. So how do we keep the political commitment on this? How do we get more spaces for exchange and collaboration? We have annual meetings of all the cities doing anti-rumors strategies, and we need always creativity and new tools. Just to finish, like one of the last examples, we design an escape rumors, which is like using the methodology of the escape rooms. We design like a tool that it's online and also presential for schools to work with youth, which is like a very special target for a lot of cities to work with, and how to learn how to dismantle prejudices and stereotypes and promote critical thinking and empathy through a tool which is in a sense a kind of game. And at the same time, now hundreds of schools in different cities in Spain are using these, that came from the brains of the volunteers and the people who are involved on the anti-rumors actions and on the different cities. So anyway, I'm sorry, being a bit too long, but I'm gonna
Thank
stop
you. Actually, that was a very critical strategy, so we should talk about this issue more. But yeah, also I recognize in our cities also should try this strategy. We have some different methodology, but I think this is very critical. So we should learn more about this anti-rumor strategy. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you to you. Thank you to you. And we see you soon. I hope. Okay.
Yeah. See you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.